I've got 1 o'clock on this clock. I guess it's a volunteer. It's new to me. Anyway, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Commissioner roll call. Phil Palmiano present.
Mike Van Dyke present.
Amendments to the agenda. Any motions to amend this agenda? No motions. Okay, so new business is the interview candidates for the commissioner vacancy. No motions or actions will be made. And I prepared just a kind of a statement of how we want to run the meeting today. And yeah, I'll read that and it'll be clear. So first of all, I just want to thank all the candidates for taking the time to come and interview for the commissioner position. I really commend you for your interest in volunteering and stepping up to serve the fire district and the community. I really want to try to make you feel as comfortable as possible, especially in an open meeting setting. I mean, it can be a little nerve-wracking. I know I'm not always that much of a public speaker, so I extend you the same courtesy as well. So out of respect for the candidates, I ask that the public just observe the interviews and not make any comments or speak directly to the candidates. Okay, that's the format that we're going to use. We do have in the public participation, if anyone wants to comment after the interviews are all completed, you're welcome to just make a statement or a comment. But again, I would ask out of respect to the candidates that you not say anything about them or criticize them or anything in that way, just out of respect to make them feel more comfortable. So we want to get to know each of the candidates better and see what skills and experience each can bring to the board and the fire district. So this is more of a one-on-one, old-fashioned type of an interview. You know, I'm old. And we've gotten, well, okay, I'll continue on with that, keep myself on track and not wander here. So for the format, Commissioner Van Dyke and I will be alternating asking the questions. We have the same questionnaire, and to each candidate. And yeah, so each one we have a questionnaire that put together, and what I'd like to do is go through it, ask the questions. We will be, or I will be, I have some people will do as well, jotting down notes and things as we go along, so not to make you nervous or anything. You said something and I'm writing it down. It's just for memory aid for myself.
Both of us.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right. So, and yeah, so we might have some possible, yeah, we might ask some follow-up questions. Did I say that? No. Okay, so we'll go through these, and then you answer the questions, we might ask some follow-up questions depending on answer and stuff. So pretty standard. So both myself and Commissioner Van Dyke have each received copies of each candidate's applications and resumes, and I've gone through each of them and studied them and looked at them and so forth. I assume you did the same. Okay. Okay, so the in-person interviews today are one tool of gathering information for us. So we've read the printed material, all the stuff that you prepared for us, and then we've got a pretty standard, I think, questionnaire to ask you, and then so we're just gathering as much information as we can about each candidate, and we will not have any deliberation or discussion between us, and no decisions will be made today. On February 24th, we'll have a special meeting, and that was posted in the original announcement, and then we'll post it again on that day, February 24th at 2 p.m. Here, and then we'll vote on a selection and appointment. Okay? So, yeah, all right. So I'd like to welcome each candidate, talk briefly with the ones that came in and decided the order will go in alphabetical order by last name. So, Mr. Dolan, if you would come up. Oh, yeah, just that. Again, I really thank you for coming.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We're a friendly group, and we just want to make this as comfortable as you can. You know, there's different ways to do it, but we felt and was recommended that we do it in an open meeting format. So otherwise, we'd have to interview separately, and it's just more complicated. So anyway, so this questionnaire is has got 10 basic headings, and so I'll read the heading, and it's kind of a category of talking about what the questions would be, and then I'll read the purpose for that heading, and then we have a few questions on each one. Okay. So the first one is commitment and availability. Okay. And the purpose of that is to ensure realistic availability for a small volunteer-based department. Okay. So first question. Oh, and also. Oh wait, I skipped. I'll go back to that. We'll stay right here. Okay. First question: why are you interested in serving as the fire commissioner?
I've been up here since 2016, and I think that sometimes you just have to reinvest in your community to help where there's a need, and there's been a lot of press and maybe panic in the community, especially with the last bond issue and that. I think that you need to sit down, and maybe I have some assets that might help, because it seems that there's a focus, and maybe that should be a broader view. And so I think that if I can help the community, I'd like to be a part of it.
Okay. Good. How much time can you realistically commit each month?
Probably about 24 hours a week.
Okay. That's a lot of time.
3 days a week, I think.
Okay.
I think that there's some huge challenges, and that the commissioners are going to have to really invest in order to come up with a plan for this next, what do you call it? Your next budget or funding vote or whatever. Levy. That's the word I couldn't think of. So I think there's going to have to be a pretty heavy investment, both either as a group or personal time.
Okay. Are you able to attend regular meetings and available when urgent issues arise? Our regular meetings are typically the second Tuesday of every
Absolutely.
month. Okay. All right. Okay, I kind of jumped the gun on that first question, so I apologize for that. But instead of jumping right into the questions, what I kind of wanted to do was allow each candidate to kind of talk about themselves a little bit, and just a kind of an overview of, you know, I've gotten to look at their resume and all that, so I've seen a lot of their credentials and so forth, and I really want you guys to kind of brag on yourselves. Don't be humble and say, well, you know, we're looking for people with things to offer, you know, experience and in lots of different areas, okay? So, and then maybe a little background on your, what you've done for work and so forth. And then at any time when you're answering a question and you feel like you want to input something, you know, I've got experience in this area because of this, then yeah, feel free to do that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So, yeah, go ahead, if you want kind of a quick background.
Well, after high school, I went in the Navy, and was honorably discharged. After that, I went to work for the FAA, and I worked, I'm certified in 3 areas: en route, terminal, and tower. So I'm one of the maybe 8% of the controllers in the nation that were able to do that. I started at Seattle Center. I worked there for 10 years. I moved to Seattle Approach. I worked there approximately 5 years. And along the way, I did little side trips. At the center, I worked as a training specialist for a few years. These are all steps to becoming a manager. At Seattle Approach, I worked as an approach controller, but also and departure controller, but also I went to work in the airspace and procedures office, and that's where I really learned critical thinking and strategic thinking, and then complex problem solving. Because in that, we brought in a 3rd runway into Seattle, and we had to deal with people that went on the press and did things like say, "What do you mean? They already have 4 runways, being 1-6 left, 1-6 right, 3-4 left, and 3-4 right. Same piece of concrete, it's just named different at each end." And so using that soundbite caused a whole bunch of other issues. Also, the Save Our Community, which is it's a coalition of the neighborhoods in the Seattle area that want to deal with air traffic, route patterns, and noise. And it all came down to property values, noise, and the airplane should be flying over poor neighborhoods. And you had a neighborhood, you just ask questions, you have to seek to understand where they're coming from. And a neighborhood says, hey, anybody who makes under 10 million, the airplanes can fly over theirs. The Seattle Save Our Community group then fractured because now everybody's got a vested interest in who's poorer, who's richer, so that was a whole new issue. At the end of it, we have good routes that are used to this day, and they've been in place since 1994 or so. And also, the other thing that we did for 6 years, the Navy had been requesting, there's an event in Seattle called Seafair. And Seafair culminates in a big hydroplane race and air show with the Blue Angels and everything over Lake Washington. And we've always accommodated that. The Navy wanted to come down and go into Elliott Bay, which is right underneath the Seattle arrival corridor, and launch and recover airplanes for 4 hours. They've always been told no. I sat down with our airspace team and we did a whole chalkboard thing. Let's come up with a way to make this happen. So basically we had 1,500 feet and below to work with. The Navy needs 1,000 feet. Angel flies a starboard delta to protect anybody going in the water. The traffic pattern for the carrier is a port delta. They're going to the left. So the news agencies, Como, Cairo, and King, all wanted their helicopters in there, and the Navy's thinking, oh, this would be a great advertisement. We put that together, and we made it happen, and it didn't interfere with Seattle's air traffic. It did cause Boeing Field to close for 4 hours because the Navy was blocking the arrival end at Magnolia there. And the big sticking point was, for the news agency, the sticking point was, who gets 1,100 feet? who gets to be closest to the action. So we took all their names, threw them in the hat, let the captain of the ship pick them out by altitude, 11, 12, and 1,300 feet. And that's how we solved that problem. That's how we got the buy-in. When you're dealing with all these problems, you need to put them on the table and do everything to walk around them and see if it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't. So, budgets. I was a district manager for terminal operations in Alaska.
We have a question on that.
Oh, go
coming up.
ahead.
So, yeah, we'll skip that so we can keep.
So, from that point on, I went to a supervisor at a little place called Boise Tower in Tracon. I worked here from 1995 to 2000. Then I went back to the regional office and I did labor relations, law, contract law, and as a facility management specialist, grievances, drug or alcohol rehabilitation or removals. And then from there I went to Northern California Tracon in the traffic management unit. That's the second busiest Tracon in the nation. I worked 5,500 airplanes a day. I worked the Bay Area from north of Beale, south of Firebaugh, and Reno approach, all from the same building, 300 controllers. From there I went to Anchorage as an ops manager. I worked as an ops manager. The management team got removed. I competed for that position. I was provided a waiver for not having a college degree, and I was selected for the position. So I worked everything after that point on a waiver without college, just based on experiential knowledge. I managed a $41 million budget up there every year at supposed to have 180 controllers. It's hard to keep controllers in Alaska. And I dealt with all of the native Alaskan villages. Nothing, your toilet paper, your cereal box, nothing gets anywhere in Alaska without going by air. So you have all kinds of issues to deal with. Whether it's putting in a runway, environmental issue, Native American issues, whatever. So it gives you a real opportunity to sit back and listen to the ownership or their needs of what they have and what it means to them. Because it's real easy to go in and say, I know this, I'm going to do this, and this is what we need to do. But you need to always temper where you're going with how can they help you get there. And so buy-in is a huge piece. And that is usually most people's tripping point, is being able to sit down and listen. You have to listen to everybody's input before, and then try to seek more information. Because there's people that have information, it could be the quietest person sitting on the wall, and they might have the one piece that's missing in the whole puzzle. So you need participation, and you need to listen.
You want to get
Yeah, I
that?
got a couple questions.
Yes,
Like,
sir.
you mentioned that you were in Alaska
Mm-hmm.
and you worked with Tracon.
Yes.
Could you explain what that means?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I looked it up on Google. That wasn't good enough.
I'm sorry. So the FAA has a ATCT, Air Traffic Control Tower. That's one acronym I probably put in there. The next one is TRACON, Terminal Radar Approach Control. That's what that stands for. And then ARTC, ARTCC, which is Air Route Traffic Control Center. So airspace in the United States is all owned by the 25 ARTCs across the nation, Puerto Rico and Hawaii, and Alaska. They delegate airspace to the approach controls. So they'll take a block of airspace, like the block I described, from 30 miles north of south of Firebaugh, 30 miles north of Beale, Reno, and the whole Bay Area. Okay? 15,000 feet and below belongs to Northern California TRACON. So if you're gonna fly through there, you're gonna talk to them. Above that would be Oakland Center. So Oakland gave us that airspace. Then that airspace, we redelegate certain portions, usually a 5-mile radius, like we'll delegate 2,000 feet and below to San Francisco Tower, Oakland Tower, San Jose Tower, all the little towers. So they own that, so they can run the whole traffic pattern without having to talk to Big Brother. So that's what those, and I guess I should have spelled them out. That was an error on my part.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
You want to go to question 2? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I
I
had
didn't
one more
mean-
thing. So
Oh, okay.
while in Alaska, I got picked up, so I commuted to Washington DC every other week for 3 years. So I'd fly down there and I worked in a bunker. I did 2 things. My office was interpretations. When I got there, we were 36 months behind on correspondence to managers that had asked for definitions or interpretations of rules. It could be labor relations rules, it could be air traffic rules. And that was because the former guy there says, we do 1 letter a week. So I put together a writing team. I brought in skilled people from different TRACONs or terminals, some were from towers, and I put together a writing team. And when it started, first I had to teach them how to write a response that the boss could sign off on and that Congress would accept. So we did that. And then it was pretty cool because within 8 months, we were caught up and we were waiting for correspondence. So we got those. And it was neat because I could get one and I could walk in and I could throw it and they were like a shark. They would all sit down and they would all read it, they would all make notes, and then they would discuss it. And they would work out a conclusion that was totally acceptable and then bring that to me. And I would read it and go over it and I would grill them on it, and then we would compose it and send it up for signature to go out for distribution. That is how you are successful, or in my book, that is how you do success. The other part of my time was locked in a bunker with a group called Booz Allen and Associates, and that was, we were basically the BRAC committee of the FAA. And we put together a program which encompassed everything from crime statistics, homeowners association dues, cost of a house, rentals, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, fire coverage, grocery expenses, schools, where were the schools rated? And the FAA went through a thing of moving to consolidating facilities, much like the military did. And this program, you put in all the data, and we were kind of surprised at what came up. Some of the places we thought were a shoe-in to move everything to, were not. And basically the program says you should just build a building out in Kansas and move every air traffic facility there, because the days of having to be under the radar are no longer needed. But it was very eye-opening because we got results that we did not expect. And one was the San Diego TRACON, where it got placed. Thought it should be closer to San Diego. Where it got moved to was out in an area where nobody was. Another place was Denver. They moved that 50 miles from the Denver airport. You know, and now it's all growing in and they get tons of noise complaints. So where should that move to? I mean, we used that as a test case to see. So, but that was very eye-opening. And so I think that all problem solving that has to be void of emotion. It has to be data driven, and you have to have empathy for those that are giving you input. You got to understand where they're coming from, because your thoughts on a budget may be completely different than yours or mine. But if you seek to understand why they're different, or what is important, then that all goes into the equation to coming up with what you need. And that's very important. Divisiveness has no place in what you're trying to do.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, let's move to the next question.
Yeah.
Why don't you get that one?
Yeah, I'll take number 2. Okay, question number 2 is understanding the commissioner role. And the purpose for it is commissioners govern, they do not run calls or micromanage operations. Maybe you can give us a, so what do you believe the primary responsibilities of a commissioner are?
I think
You've
based on
been
that
sharing some-
question,
Yeah, you've been sharing. some-
because, you know, I believe they're like a third level manager. In other words, you may have done the job or you may not have. You may have experience that's needed. But here's a good example. When I was growing up, the lady that raised me was first a Sioux nurse on the railroad, then she was a nurse at the World's Fair in Seattle, 62. The doctor that was there was a Korean War veteran doctor, and their team is credited with starting what you have as a response team from the fire department. She developed that team developed what an EMT is today. I learned 4 different ways to do CPR from 1972 until 1977 alone. Okay, when I first learned it, you smacked them in the chest, right? And then you went from there. So they took them from a Cadillac ambulance to a Winnebago motorhome cardiac response team to the trucks you're driving in today. That is exactly the one thing I learned in that training was, you're an EMT, get out of the way, I'm taking care of this. The problem is if that EMT was the commissioner here, and the expert, the heart surgeon walks in, and you tell him to get out of the way, that's not my place. I'm not there to fight the fire. I may be there to take notes and ask questions, to seek to understand, why did you do this? Why is this happening? But in no way to interfere, because that actually detracts from the success of whoever. So I kind of took the long way around there.
All right. How should commissioners work with the fire chief in a small department?
I think the commissioners are the conduit between the public and the chief. The chief is the on-site expert, okay? If the on-site expert says this, then the first thing that the commissioners need to do is say, okay, why? All right? So if the worst thing a chief could do is just walk out and say, here's what I need. Here's a number. The commissioners need to find out, how did we get to that number? What does this building block? How does that help our community? What is this building block? What is this? This. Because the commissioners are the conduit. They're the communicators to their districts. That's what I believe they should be. I don't know if that's what's in the job description, but I believe that a commissioner is the conduit. They're also the buffer. If the community wants to throw rocks or don't understand, then I think the commissioners need to figure out why they don't understand and then do a better job at communicating. That's my thought.
Well, I have another question here, but I think you answered it.
Oh,
What decisions should remain with the chief and the officers? I think you just
yeah, he's the captain of the ship, okay? He's the captain. It's not for me to judge why they're doing it. It's for me to be able to understand why they're doing it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
If I understand, then I can defend it, or I can go out and I can carry the banner to help get support for it. I mean, that would be like focusing on the end game when it's the whole journey that is really important, and I think the commissioners have to make that journey.
All right, leadership and judgment. Commissioners make decisions that affect safety, finances, and morale. Describe a time you had to make a difficult or unpopular decision. You can just give us one example.
Dress code.
What is
Dress
that?
code. New contract came in, Anchorage, Alaska, implemented business casual. Because the guys that like to ride their snow machine in, take off all their gear, stand there and work traffic in their long johns. In the town, in the trade, walking around in slippers and long johns. So we put in the dress code. Union rep fires off a letter to two companies, Carhartt and Dickies. To this day, I won't buy Dickies. Here's what happened. I get a call from this gentleman from Carhartt. He says, I got a letter here, and it's signed by the facility rep, and it says, you banned Carhartts in the facility. I said, no. We have business casual. He says, if I have business casual in my catalog,
Can they wear it? I said, yeah. He sent me 350 catalogs, overnight delivery to Anchorage, Alaska at $125 a pound. Boom. 3 weeks later, I got served, had to go to Washington DC because Dickies didn't ask any questions. They jumped to a conclusion and sued us because we banned their wear, which was not true. We banned wearing foul weather gear and underwear in the facility, but they didn't seek to understand. That's the difference, and I think we should be more like the Carhartt management team.
Okay, how do you approach making decisions with incomplete information?
I don't think you can make a decision with incomplete information.
Okay.
Now, there are people that are paid to do that, like the chief. He may not have every answer, but like in a controller's context, when somebody calls in, you can hear in their voice inflection on the radio that maybe something isn't right in that cockpit. That intuition comes from experience. So it's not, so the chief may make a decision based on incomplete information, but he's going with experiential knowledge. I don't think a commissioner should make any decision without complete information or the best information available.
Okay. How do you handle disagreements or pressure in a close-knit community?
Well, that comes to seeking to understand. You have to understand what everybody's buy-in is. Most issues are readily solved through education. How did we get here? Why is my dollar divided into these pieces and what does it do? How does training affect whether I can get homeowners insurance? You can't just go to the end game. So they need to go on the journey with you. And honestly, sometimes they just don't need to take the journey because they won't grasp. And knowing that is difficult.
Okay. Want to take 4?
Yep. Question 4, financial responsibility and oversight. Purpose is to protect limited funds and ensure accountability. What experience do you have with budgets, grants, and financial oversight? You've been giving us a little bit of that.
Yeah. So, in my experience, a $41 million budget. Out of that budget, there were some things I had to pay for. Some equipment is paid for from somebody else's pot. Controllers operate the equipment, they don't own it. Airway facilities own it, so their budget buys the equipment. But as far as building maintenance, education, travel, drug and alcohol awareness programs, community programs, and PC&B, paid compensation and benefits. And it's an easy answer. The biggest part of that budget was paid compensation and benefits. That ate up the biggest part of my budget. So that comes around to the success of the organization. An FTE or a full-time employee may cost this amount of money. At what point is it cheaper for me to pay overtime rather than filling a vacancy? And then there comes a time when it's no longer useful because you're using your asset too much. You need to put another asset in there. So those are things that you have to sit down and budget. You have to work strategically. You cannot be reactionary at all on a budget. You must plan forward. You must take into account accelerated costs. So if you're looking at the way we always did it and this always worked, that's not going to work in 2027. If a simple example, an oil change used to be $39.95. Then we had the pandemic, and now you go down, it's $105, $115 for a Subaru. Okay? So if you take that into account, how is the fire department operating? Are they on this? I don't know the budget. I don't know where we're at. But if you're looking at a budget that you were using pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, or funds that were rattled up and they're depleting, that means that foresight wasn't given to increase the income to cover the operation of the fire department. So you have to be strategic, you have to plan ahead, and you have to go through all the complexities needed to make the watch work. Does that
Yeah,
help?
yeah, thank you.
You probably answered the second question there too. How would you approach approving major purchases or expenses? I gathered that a little bit from what you were just saying.
Well, that comes into strategic thinking because every piece of equipment in a fire department, I imagine, is like an airline. It has a life expectancy. Now, I myself know, as a mechanic, that some things sitting may have 5,000 miles on them, but that doesn't mean that when you fire it up, it's not going to leak from every orifice from lack of use. So you have to sit down, you have to look at your plan, and then that's part of the whole strategic budget. You must look at equipment replacement. You must look at PC&B. You must look at building maintenance. You got to look not only, oh, we got this fire station. Okay, when was the last time it was painted? When was the last time you checked for asbestos? When was the last time the furnace was put in? Those are all things that need to be encompassed in your strategic plan. And I think if you do that plan and people understand, hey, this is bigger than we ever thought, and this is what we've been missing, and this is how we've been doing business, okay, we have to change. So how do we change? That's how I would handle it.
How do you ensure transparency and accountability?
I have nothing to hide because everybody that is there, like I said, somebody could be sitting on the wall and say, I might have a dumb question here, but what happens when I throw the switch? You get good information from everybody. Some information just goes on a shelf for later, but some information has got that aha moment in it. And the more the community can sit and look, the more the community can support what you're trying to do to protect them.
All right, number 5, communication and teamwork. Purpose, the role of this requires working with the chief, the board members, and the public. How do you communicate during disagreements?
The same thing, seek to understand. A disagreement is caused usually because somebody doesn't understand. Or they think they have a better idea, but they're not willing to put it on the table and let you walk around it. what you have to do is you have to understand. And it could be, their issue may not be business oriented. There's a lot of issues that stumble, even in the FAA or government, and you can see it on TV, where somebody has a personal disagreement, or somebody, it could be, hey, that person's kid did a burnout on my lawn, or a lawn job on my lawn, and therefore I don't like them as a parent because they didn't teach their kid right. Those things all come into play. Maybe the person had a bad day. Maybe they just came in and, it was just a bad day. It may not be that they disagree with you. Maybe they just disagree with everything at that point. So you have to seek to understand where they're coming from.
How would you respond to concerns from firefighters or community members?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry. How would you respond to concerns from firefighters or community members?
Well, you need to address them. Now, you need to evaluate them. A lot of concerns buffer if the person presenting the concern feels that they were heard, which means that's a commitment from the board, is that, and I believe that the commissioners have a concern. In other words, every piece of this is a concern. If you want it to run perfect, you have to listen to the concerns. Now, some are just complaints. If people have concerns, I also want to know what their recommendation is, because that'll also give you insight to where they're coming from. So if you come in and you say, it's too hot in here, okay, and you're wearing 4 sweaters, we can find out the issue, how to work it. So always seek to understand.
Very good. Okay, Mike, number 6.
Okay, ethics and integrity. Purpose is ensure trust in a small town environment. How would you handle a conflict of interest involving friends and family?
Define the conflict. What do you mean by a conflict of interest? Do you mean like, I own this company and now I'm going to bring my kid in and make him president of the company without any experience? Or I don't know what you mean. I'm trying to...
I guess how much would you involve your family in being a fire commissioner? Would you recommend that they be hired for maybe some position, whether it be a secretary in the office?
No. If there is a hiring process and a competition or benchmarks that have to be met, then I think every candidate should have to meet those benchmarks. Favoritism has no place in the success of any business.
How would you do, what would you do if you believed a board member acted improperly?
I'd take them aside and ask them why. And that is, you have to seek to understand. Maybe they didn't understand that they were acting wrong. And that could come right down to, technically you can't buy a police officer a cup of coffee. Technically you can't do that. I was raised by cops in Seattle. You can't. So sometimes something done in all innocence could be perceived or viewed as improper. So it takes a lifetime to build, to earn trust and integrity from people, and it only takes one action to destroy it. So you have to find out why, because maybe it was in all innocence. If it wasn't, then it needs to be brought and addressed.
Last question here, how do you separate personal relationships from official decisions?
Oh, that's pretty straightforward. If you base a personal, you're talking about a business decision? So if you base a business decision based on a personal emotion, I'm going to call it an emotion, you won't be successful for very long. You have to be able to tell your friend, you know what? I can't have you drive my truck because you always end up in the ditch. You cannot, you have to find the best person for the best position. Friend, not friend, it may be somebody that you don't like, but they're very good at what they do. Now you have to figure out how do you